Greetings and salutations, everyone. So glad to have you here. If you're with us live, so glad you're here. If you're with us later, I'm equally glad that you're here, but let me speak to those live for just a sec. If you're with us live, go into the comments section in whatever platform you're in and say hello. Tell us where you're located. That's pretty simple to do. It would be helpful to us and interesting to us, and I might even share where you're located. So do that if you would. And beyond that, I want you to get the most you can possibly get from this conversation. And here's what I know that will help you do that. And that is to engage with us. Like if you were joining my guests and I around an actual table rather than a virtual one, if you had a question, a comment, or an idea, you would share it, offer it, ask it, right? So why not do that even though you're virtual? Because the same spot where you can tell us where you're located is the same spot that you can share that question, share that idea, share that comment. I hope you'll do that, because when you do, it'll make a better conversation and eventually a better podcast. Yeah, you can see up over my shoulder. This will eventually be an episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, but it won't come out on the podcast until April. So if you're here watching this, you're ahead of the game. And I'm so glad that you are. But given that, I need to move us into what will be eventually the podcast itself. So Marissa, this is for you in 3, 2, 1. The title of this episode, The Voice-Driven Leader, might not be perfectly clear, but let me be perfectly clear that you will want to listen to and take action on this episode. Because you are listening, I know you take your role as a leader seriously, and you want your team to grow, develop, and succeed at higher levels. Being, as my guest Jeremie Kubicek says, a voice-driven leader can help you do exactly that. That's why you're here, and that's why we're here. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are here helping you grow as a leader, both personally and professionally, to lead in a way that helps you make a bigger difference for your teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast, you could join us in the future live on your favorite social media platform. Well, at least on some social media platforms. You can find out when live episodes are happening and get all the inside scoop about the Remarkable Leadership Podcast on either our Facebook or LinkedIn groups, just two of the platforms where these take place live streamed. You can find out how to join those groups by going to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn. If you like what you're hearing today and want help in developing the leaders in your organization, let's talk. Reach out to us, info@kevinikenberry.com, and we'll schedule time to learn more about your needs and share how we might help. As I said a second ago, my guest today is Jeremie Kubicek, and he is, let me tell you about him. First, he is a globally recognized speaker, author, and leadership expert dedicated to helping leaders multiply healthy influence and self-awareness. As the co-founder of Giant Worldwide, he equips leaders and organizations to build cultures of trust, peace, and performance through practical systems of people development. He's the author of Making Your Leadership Come Alive and the Peace Index, and the co-author of multiple books, the 100X Leader, 5 Voices, 5 Gears, The Communication Code, and now The Voice-Driven Leader, hence the title of this episode, everyone. And here's what you may not know about Jeremie is he's one of the very few people to be guests on this show 3 times. This is the 535th episode, and this is the 3rd time for Jeremie, and we'll make sure the other 2 are linked in the show notes. Jeremie, welcome. Glad you're here.
Good to be with you again. Thank you for the invitation, opportunity. Always great to be with you.
It's my pleasure as well. So let's start by thinking about and talking about what's the big idea of this book.
Yeah, the big idea of the book is leadership is usually, most people go, yeah, I know how to lead. I've been a leader my whole life. And the trick
and they're all wrong, by the way, about that.
And the trick here is like, well, how's that working out for you? Meaning, what would it look like if you actually thought of the other person? So let me give you the big idea this way. I used to live in Russia. And when I lived in Moscow, I learned the Russian language. And because I learned the Russian language, I had more influence than my other partners who didn't speak the language. Because if I go, "Moi дружи, как жизнь, да? Ты понимаешь, Kevin? Yeah, do you speak Russian? Ты говоришь по-русски?" And if you did, you would connect with me because you'd go, "Oh,
I get a smile on my face. We connect.
You're speaking my language. You're not forcing me to speak your language." And the big idea on the voice-driven leader is if you can learn the language of another person and speak their language, you're going to have a better opportunity to develop them, lead them, and apprentice them than you would if you forced them to do it your way.
I love that. I want to read something on page 5 in the book. I'm not going to ask you to tell me what did you say on page 5. I'm going to read it to you because it's a super important point. And well, let me just read it and then I'll make a comment and then hand it off to you. Developing people doesn't fail from lack of care. It fails when everything else crowds it out. Like you make the point that most leaders really want to develop their people. Unfortunately, certainly many leaders aren't doing it or aren't doing it very well. So what is it from your perspective that crowds it out? What are the things that keep us from doing what we'd really like to do, which is develop our folks?
I often say it's because people have to make the donuts. People are always making the donuts. You've got to do the work. So the work crowds it out. A report from your boss crowds it out. You're tired, that crowds it out. You have a needy employee. Yeah, I know. I just don't want to spend time with them because it's such a pain. And so the development process, it has to become a system. If it's not a system, it'll wear you out. And over time, we default to ease. We default to just doing the things that we know we have to do rather than doing the important things.
It reminds me of somewhere, and I won't be able to attribute this in the moment, but I remember hearing once that a system is something that saves yourself time, energy, and money. And so to your point, the things that crowd out development, that are good intention to develop others, mostly organizational, mostly individually, comes down to our time and our energy, right? And organizationally, it sometimes comes down to that third part, which is money. Having a system. That's what we're going to talk about today. So what can organizations do, Jeremie, to help get over the hurdle that you just so accurately defined?
I think I'll tell people this all the time. If you're running an organization, the most important person in your organization is your team leader, the people who lead people. And how many people lead people do you have in your organization? Do you have 2,000? Do you have 200? Do you have 20? And from another book of mine, The 100X Leader, we called them the Sherpa. So the idea of a Sherpa is someone like on Mount Everest, they climb while helping people climb. Well, they're the most important people. I would spend your entire budget on those people. If you have your leadership training, spend it on getting your Sherpa healthy, because the healthier they are, the more they'll develop their people. So then if you can train those people who lead people on how to apprentice people, they'll take care of everybody else on the mountain. You don't have to worry about everyone else. You just focus on your Sherpa, and you get your team leaders thinking correctly, understanding who's on their team, knowing how to develop people. And that's what this entire book is about.
Thinking correctly. I mean, we frame that around mindset before skill set, before habit set. And what I like about this first part of our conversation, Jeremie, is that we've been talking not about mindset or skill set. We've been talking about habit set. Like, how do we actually go make happen what needs to happen? Now, we're going to talk today about some things that can increase the skill set too. But I think your point is that, like, it's not because people don't want to.
Right.
Right. And I think that's really important to hear. And I think that's really important to hear if you're listening and you've got your organizational hat on here, is that we don't start framing our leaders as the problem employee that you just described a second ago. Like, they're not needy.
Right.
they have needs. There's a big difference between those two things, right?
That's it.
So you said in the book, and this is kind of, it's not a really huge piece of the book, but it struck me as something I'd like us to talk about. You said that leaders tend to have one of three levels of commitment as it relates to development. So we can talk about them, but what do you mean by that? And let's frame that up. Maybe as you talk, people can be thinking about where they are.
Yeah, I mean, the real idea is that if you're going to truly lead and you're going to be a person that people want to follow, then you're going to be committed to the process. And the idea is, are you committed to being a Sherpa? Are you committed to going, hey, I have a mindset that I have to be healthy, I have to climb, and then I'm going to help other people climb as well. So there's a true commitment to leadership, right? Once that happens, am I committed to knowing who they are, not just who I am? So it's like, who is the other person? So if I'm committed to then knowing, oh, Kevin is a pioneer. Now we use the 5 voices because we built the 5 voices. When you understand the wiring of someone, then to go, I'm committed to learning how you learn, how you think, how you see the world. And that takes a commitment of effort. Now, once I know that, 1, I'm committed to becoming, I am a leader. 2, I'm committed to learning your language. 3, I'm now committed to knowing where you are on the journey. Are you just starting? Are you onboarding? Or are you developing? Or are you truly engaged as a leader? Or are you multiplying? Where are you on the square? And am I committed to help you get to the next level? And that's a process.
For sure. And so some leaders are committed, as you've just described. Some leaders are passive, which is where we started. Man, I'd really like to, but I just don't ever get around to it. Right. And then the third place that you suggest that we might be is what's called reactive. So what would you say that looks like in terms of commitment?
I think that is the default. When you think of literally a default, again, because of the pressures that you have as leaders and how difficult it is. Because honestly, you're like, I think most leaders are like climbers on the mountain. They're like, my job is just to perform. Like, yeah, but you have to help other people. Well, their reactive is like, yeah, what do you need, Kevin? Okay, sure. And it's a reactive model, not a proactive. So that proactive literally is, I'm thinking about what you're going to need. I'm going to anticipate what you need to help you get to that next level. And that is just a level of commitment, as I was saying before, that you're thinking like a Sherpa. It's a mindset like a Sherpa. So therefore, you're thinking who, where, how, all those details to get people to the next level.
Yeah, I love that. So you said something else in the book, almost in passing, that I wanted us to explore. We're going to get, you mentioned the 5 voices. We're going to get to the 5 voices because that helps us better understand the other person, which is sort of to your point, the big idea here. But you said something else, again, almost in passing, that I think is worth us talking about. You said, are you delegating or are you developing? So talk about that difference, because one of the supposed purposes of delegating is to develop, and yet you're saying they're not the same. So talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, delegating is there's an art, and it's important, but oftentimes expectations are the issue, and development is a methodical process to go, hey, I'm going to take Kevin from truly unconscious, and he's clueless and he doesn't know it, to actually becoming.
Hey, now.
Yeah, I know. I need to use a different name. Let's use Bob. Bob is.
How did you know? Like, seriously.
But there's a process. So if I'm delegating, I'm basically, delegation is usually a task or a tactic, or it's something that I'm giving you the ability, or maybe I'm multiplying something into you. But development, it is a journey, and a development is a commitment to literally taking people from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to level 4. And you can't just delegate that. You can't just tell people, I need you to read this, do this. You actually have to develop. And there's just a big difference between the two. And it really is a commitment to going, if you want to develop. I mean, I have teammates and people I've worked with for 12, 13, 14 years. And I have a bevy of different people that I can pull from to go, hey, I'm looking at a new venture. Let's pull you over. Would you be interested in doing this with me? Well, because they've been developed and they've been in a process of development. Now they're ready for that shot or that opportunity to step in.
I want to take a second. You mentioned the 5 voices. You said the 5 voices is something that you all created. Everyone who's listening has done some kind of assessment, call it whatever you want to call it, Myers-Briggs, colors, insights, call it call it DISC, call it whatever. You use 5 voices. And I don't want us to go deeply there because I want us to get past that, but frame that up for us to quickly understand from the 5 voices.
We took the Carl Jung's work from, which is where Myers-Briggs came from, and the Big 5, and which is the most validated tool. And we basically put them together and created the 5 voices to make it simple enough for a 13-year-old to get. Because the problem was inside organizations, if you go through Myers-Briggs and DISC, everyone's done them. It's super hard to remember. And then later, you don't know how to teach it to someone else. So you say, hey, what's your personality? Yeah, I'm an ESPN. And you're like, I don't think you're an ESPN. They don't remember it. So if you weren't in the room doing the training with them, it's not memorable. So we take like an ENFP and go, that's a connector. ENTP, you're a pioneer. So you're not going to forget if you're a connector or a pioneer or a nurturer or a creative or a guardian. Those are your 5 big personality. And there's 16 variations of those 5. But if you know the first voice, it's so much easier to have a conversation. So what we've done is we basically made it to scale. That's why Google uses the 5 voices. We work with the U.S. Air Force. We work with lots of companies around the world because it scales so much easier than like if you're a 7 with a wing 8 or I'm a high D, high I. It's just not intuitive. So we were trying to make a language that's so intuitive and so easy. And now we've added 5 voices AI. So you can literally now hyper personalize everything. And so if I know who you are, and I can send, I'm going to do a performance review because Kevin's a pioneer. So if I know who you are and who I am, how do I write a performance review that fits Kevin? Well, now AI is now giving me language to speak to your language in nanoseconds. That's the future. And that's the beauty of hyper personalization. And so, and then even more so in the 5 voices, 73% are present oriented and 27 are future oriented. So the nurturers are 43% and the guardians are 30%. Well, if you know that and you know who you're talking to, you're going to speak differently to them with more detail than you would a future oriented voice.
So again, 5 voices or any of the other tools, we typically have used them. We have often used them to understand ourselves. You're taking a very different approach, which is one that we take as well, which is, and I need to use this to understand others. And how do I communicate more effectively with them based on how they're wired, et cetera, et cetera. In this book, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff we could talk about there. But in this book, you're framing those 5 voices around how we learn. So talk about that shift a little, because I think everything you just said before that sort of makes sense to people, whatever model they might know, if they know one. But you're saying here, hey, this is a little bit, there's something here about how we learn. And if we're going to be developing, coaching, helping others develop, then how they learn is a big part of that. So like, talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So think of it like a journey, right? So let's say you are a pioneering leader, which means you don't have a lot of patience. You are very direct. We're going to win. And you don't have a lot of attention span to development. Development's hard for you. Okay. And you got a brand new employee who's a nurturer. They're the nemesis voice from each other. They're the complete opposites. And they make up 43% of the population. Well, the nurturer, when they join a team, they want to feel the love. They want to know the camaraderie. They want to know why we're doing what we're doing. They want to feel it, and they want to serve, and they want to help. But they're going to need a lot of clarity, a lot of expectations, a lot of holding their hand in the very beginning. Well, that pioneer is not going to do that very well. And
the pioneers who are just listening were like, oh my word. Seriously, Jeremie? Really?
That's it. And you know it too, because you're like, oh yeah, that's me. That's totally me. So versus if you're a pioneer and you have a connector, I'm a connector, and a connector, we're like bees. We pollinate. We've got ideas constantly. We've got people constantly. So we're wanting to connect ideas and people. And the connectors will fake it before they make it a lot more than other voices. So what will happen is they'll try to go too fast. And you'll say, all right, Jeremie, here's what we need from you. We're going to do, yeah, I got it. We're good. Let's go. Hey, by the way, I've got an idea. Hey, by the way, I've got a person. And all of a sudden you're going to freak people out a little bit. And the connector, and they're going to go too fast, and the pioneer's going to go along with that. So the pioneer has to do a good job of reining them in for a little bit, because they'll even go faster sometimes than the pioneer, and they'll be sporadic. So the pioneer needs to understand there's five other voices. They could have a pioneer on their team, another pioneer, which could have battles. There could be a nurturer that's going to drive you nuts. There's going to be a guardian that they want all types of details. I mean, they want to know the checklists, and they've got a creative that's going to be in their head, and they're going to be dreaming about all types of ideas, and they're going to want to know, why are we doing this? That's an example. So when you know and get into it, then it's like, if you know who you are and you know who they are, where are they on the journey? And that's the entire book.
And the book then takes us to this thing that you've hinted at called the developmental square. And I know that many of those of you who are consuming this are listening. But for those of you that are watching, here's a picture of it. And basically, everybody, without the picture, what the square is, a square, obviously, with 4 stages based on where the person is and what we do to help them. So can you just talk about it briefly? And then I want to talk about one specific place on it.
Yeah. So the first stage is the foundational stage. It's onboarding. Some of you are really great at onboarding. Most people they get lazy with it. So the first stage is onboarding. This is when an employee, they're clueless and they don't know they're clueless. They're excited, but they're nervous. Sometimes if it's a lower job, that's a 3-week foundational stage. If that's a higher level job, that might be 6 months of a foundation stage. It kind of just depends on the skill sets. Then we move from that all the way around to the immersion stage, which they start doing the work. They start helping you. That's when they realize they're consciously incompetent. They realize they don't know what they're doing. They see other people thriving, and they're not thriving yet because they're still trying to figure it out. And this is a danger zone, which we'll get into. And I'll hold and we'll come back to that. And then that stage, once you get them to immersed into their work and they start doing it, then eventually there's an engagement stage. They're empowered, and this empowerment stage is when they're engaged in the work and they're getting really good and they're getting reps and they're consciously competent. They are aware that they now know what to do. And then eventually the last stage is a multiplication stage, where they start training other people. When they start getting really good at their work, then they can, it's unconscious competence. And then eventually you maybe they take your spot as you move up to the next level, and they become the leader, or they multiply a task or a role.
There's a word that you've used several times in this conversation that was the word that I kept thinking as I read the book and talked to and explored with you the developmental square, and that is the word apprentice. And I said to you before we went live, before we hit the start button, that this is that what you're describing and layering in the 5 voices with is a model of learning that's been around for a very long time, and it's been proven, but many of us have maybe forgotten or discounted it. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, because we're in the past we had like the builders, we had people who are masons. It was easy to like, hey, I'm going to do it and you just watch me. I'm going to do it and you help me. Now you're going to do it. I'm going to help you. Then you do it and I watch you. That's full apprenticeship. Well, in our technological era of like, hey, Kevin, watch how I did this text message. Did you see how I did this email? So there's not room to play because so much of it is communication. Some of it is building and tech, and it's on our own device. There's not room for people to watch and play. So we have to think of it differently. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is show you how to do development in this era.
So you said, and I said, you kind of put a pin in it. And this is we get to a point of we are consciously incompetent, and we've not moved on yet. And you describe that as the pit of despair. We've all been there. But talk about that in terms of how do we help move our folks through that, lessen the depth of the pit and the length of time we're in the pit, if you will.
Yeah, and avoid it entirely is what we've actually found.
Right.
So
Right.
the reality is there's a pit at the end of the road of the immersion stage. So you've found you're onboarded, and man, I'm so glad to be here. How fun. This is going to be great. I love it. I'm so excited. Now we get to the immersion stage, and I start realizing I don't know what I'm doing. I start faking it. I'm looking for help from someone, and I'm not getting it. And my boss has left me. I don't think my boss trusts me. I don't think he thinks it was a good hire. So now I'm avoiding him or her. I'm now, I feel horrible. I'm coming to work. I'm dreading coming to work. And when I come check in, everyone else goes to their cubes or to their desk or wherever. And I go downstairs and check into the pit of despair with 2 or 3 other people that are down there too. Not literally, but figuratively. And I'm down there. I'm like, hey, how long you been down here? Yeah. Who pushed you in? Yeah, Bob. He's a jerk, man. That guy. And then when I see Bob, I'm like, hey, Bob, how you doing? I fake it. And so everything is faking. But everyone else above ground, they're all working around me because I'm at that level of consciously incompetent. And that is a feeling. That is an area. And so what happens then, if you get stuck down there, we've been doing this for 15 years. We couldn't think of one person that we knew in the pit of despair that actually ever made it to be a thriving employee. They either eventually left the company or they were let go. Because when you're in the pit, you become so insecure, so jaded, you got to start over. You got to go back to the foundation stage and learn it again. And then you're embarrassed. And then you've lost trust in your boss, and they've lost trust in you and everyone who works around you. So your influence is just shot. So the key here is, the reality is every employee will have some sort of conscious incompetent moment. Yep. Your job as a leader is to give them enough vision, to give them enough to really be with them and give them specific encouragement, and then give them informal and formal time and tell them, hey, Bob, you're about to jump in the pit of despair. I've seen it 1,000 times. Let's just stop. Let's go. Let's get a lunch. What's going on? Where are you at? Where do you need help? How can I help you? You're doing a great job here. You've done that really well. You're really close. Let's go back and figure it. And then it gives them the confidence to get past that pit into conscious competence.
To jump it, build a bridge over it, whatever. Because I wrote about this the other day, Jeremy, about the fact that we all, as humans, tend to overreact to what's right in front of us, right? And what we're doing as a leader and what you just described is helping people see beyond the moment, helping people see that, hey, look how far you've come and here's what's next. And I trust and believe in you to get there. And that's what helps people jump the pit, avoid the pit, walk around the pit, build a bridge across the pit, however you wanted to frame it. And it's a critical thing for us to do. And as leaders, oftentimes we miss that because we see the bigger picture that they don't see, and we don't realize that they're seeing the stop sign and they're not seeing the road ahead.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Before we sort of move into clearing up and finishing up our conversation, is there any sort of point that I didn't ask about? As I said at the start, there's so much we could talk about.
Yeah. Well,
is there anything specifically as we're chatting that you're like, hey, I still want to say this. I still want people to hear this.
That's why I think what I'm attempting to do in this book is it's the meatiest, most practical book if you truly, truly want to develop people. And because, again, it goes back to one, you have to be a developer of people. If you want to develop people, then you need to know who they are. And I found that with my work in college athletics. Right now, there's a lot of NIL, a lot of transfer portal, and coaches. Today's world, if they don't learn the voice of their players are so fickle, they'll leave with one bad practice. Well, in the same way, developing employees, you're going to spend time and energy anyway. It saves you so much money if you'll just learn how to actually do it. And this actually all started at my home with my wife, with my kids, my 3 kids. And I learned the language. My daughter's a creative. My son's a guardian. My youngest is a nurturer. And I led them based on who they were, not based on who I was.
Or who I hoped they would be, thought they were going to be, whatever, right? No projection.
Mm-mm. And so by doing that, we have the best relationship. We have a really strong, great conversations, and we use the same tools that I teach with my kids. So my point is, it's a commitment to development, but your commitment to development means I'm learning, who are you? Where are you? How do I get you to the next level? And keeping it that simple. Then the game is then go to the square and then put your people on the square. Literally go, oh, okay, I'm going to analyze all my team members. I've got Karen. She's brand new. I think she's a nurturer. She's in the onboarding foundation. I've got Tim. Tim is definitely crusty. He's in the immersion stage for sure, heading right to the pit of despair. I better jump right there. And I've got 3 people over here on the empowerment and in multiplication. And that's how you start thinking like a developing leader. And it's a really empowering concept.
So since you're a connector, well, I ask everybody this, but it's especially useful because you're a connector. And we've been talking about getting to know others. And so I always ask a couple of questions at the end that are really to help those of you listening or watching to get to know my guest, my colleague here. And in this case, here are those 2 questions. The first one is, Jeremie, what do you do for fun?
Yeah. So what do I do for fun? I travel, I go to fun experiences, and I love finding off the wall, so we do food tours, or we'll find these most random places and have experiences. And so that's what I love to do with my wife or with friends, is travel and find unique spots.
And the only thing you knew for sure I would ask you is, what are you reading?
I'm reading a book. I'm kind of a nerd like this. I like biographies. I'm reading Lead Like Ike, and it's all about Eisenhower and how he built the infrastructure highway system, like the interstate highway system. And the reason is it's all about infrastructure, and it's all about literally building. If you're going to build to scale something significant, then you've got to build your infrastructure right inside an organization. So I'm kind of nerding out about that right now.
Lead like Ike. We will have connection to that, link to that book in the show notes, as well as a link to The Voice Driven Leader that Jeremie wrote with his partner, Steve Cockrum. We'll probably have links to some of his other books there as well, where you can always just find them. But where can we, Jeremie, learn more? Where do you want to point people?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got all the social media stuff.
Yeah.
But where do you want to point people if they want to connect with you, ask you a question, learn more, etc.?
The easiest is jeremiekubicek.com, which again, the name is not easy, but once you have it in your link, that would be the easiest place to connect.
Okay. Awesome. So please do that, jeremiekubicek.com. And so now my question for all of you, my question that I ask you every single episode, really the most important question of this conversation is for you. And that question is, what are you going to do? Now what? What action will you take as a result of this? And at the simple end of that spectrum is, well, maybe I want to go buy a book, or I want to follow Jeremie on LinkedIn or something like that. Like, that's certainly a useful thing to do, but that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, what did you hear today that says, yeah, I need to do something about that? That's a good idea. I need to act on that. And if it's just that fleeting thought and then you move on to the next thing, you won't take that action. So what are the things that you heard today that you want to do that would make a difference for you and for your team that you will act on? Because when you do that, then what you've just done is invested your time in it with a significant chance for return. Jeremie, thanks so much for being here. It's a pleasure again for us to have a conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be with you.
And everybody, if you enjoyed it, make sure you come back. And if you didn't know of Jeremie until today, make sure you go to the show notes, because we'll have links to the other two times when Jeremie's been on, when you hear more of his voice and more of his insight into being a more effective leader, a more effective communicator, and become, in general, more effective. I hope that you will do that. And I hope that you will come back next week. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss another episode, including next week when we'll be back with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.